What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training. And today we're going to be breaking down how wide receivers can make faster cuts and how they can get in and out of their breaks quicker. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it can teach you a few new things. But also, fellas, if you are a wide receiver and you would like access to 200 plus wide receiver drills, all broken down into specific categories with the exact sets, reps, and a video example of each one to follow, check out that very first link in the description below, you guys. As you can see here, these are the different categories as of right now what we have on our site. We have over 200 plus drills for wide receiver route running, releases, catching, and gym workouts with the sets and reps to follow. So check out that very first link in the description below to get access to that. Let's get started with this video. So now, first route we're going to be looking at here, this is a bad example of having an explosive cut, all due to the foot strike of the wide receiver. Now, this is something we spend a lot of time on with our wide receivers, trying to fix this problem, and we're going to be showing a positive example of this in a second. So this wide receiver comes off the ball. He does this like kind of diamond release where he's taking 3 steps to the outside, trying to get the DB to open up to the fade so he could slip underneath and run a slant. So anytime that you are making a single cut, this could go for the top of like a post route, top of an out route, on a diamond release slant, whatever it is, but you have to cut off of one foot. Your foot strike is not only important for explosion and being able to get out of the break, but is also important for safety of the cut. So you see how when he makes this cut, he goes here, and then he goes 1, 2, 3, and he reaches outside of his frame with the cut leg. That is a spot that we never want to be at because that puts a lot of pressure on your knee. That can put a lot of pressure on your Achilles, on your ankle. And when your foot is outside of your frame, do you think you're going to be able to drive off of the cut? Probably not, right? Because it's not inside of your body frame. We never want to have my feet get insanely far outside of my shoulders. Maybe just slightly outside of your shoulders, but for the most part, we want to operate inside of my frame. So you see with this wide receiver, all because he's reaching for the cut. And this is why I have a problem with a lot of wide receivers doing, and listen, cones are a necessary evil to set up drills, to be able to do exercises, but as wide receivers, you have to be mindful of it's not about getting to the cone on every single drill. A lot of wide receivers will set up different cone drills and they'll run and they'll reach trying to get to the cone. Oh, I have to get to the landmark. We should never be thinking that when we are doing drill work. We should always be trying to operate off of steps, cutting off of specific steps to keep my movements inside of my frame. Okay, so now you see how with this wide receiver, again, this is probably built up, I would say. Maybe he's just, trying to reach to be able to slow down, but it's probably from having just muscle memory of him reaching on certain cuts that he has been doing while training, while working out, whatever it is. And you see the first part of his foot to hit is the heel toe. And when the heel hits and then the toe slaps down, that leg extends. And like I said, that is not a position to drive off of the cut. And that's where all of your speed comes from. Because I feel confident that every single wide receiver can sell their routes, right? They can make DB think they're running a fade, they're running a certain move, they got to run hard, they're running fast. But to be able to change direction efficiently, that is the tricky part. Because I don't just want to get separation, I want to be able to keep separation. I want to be able to accelerate out of the break and win the race back to the ball. But I cannot do that with incorrect foot strike. So when you strike heel toe, that is not where we want to be. When you cut, you want your whole foot to be on the ground, but we want to try to be on the ball of my foot first. And that's what we're going to show in this second example. So let's play this full speed. Just make sure, fellas, we are not reaching for the cut. Because one last thing before I move on to the next one. You see how when he reaches, look where his next step is. You see how it's kind of like a negative step, like it doesn't really go anywhere? In theory, when you cut off of this third step, your next step wants to already be down the 45. You want to be pushing off of this, opening up your hip and getting out of the break. I cannot do that when my foot's outside my frame. When the foot's outside the frame, we cannot drive. You'll drag the back foot and we take that negative step. It creates extra time at the break point. So now let's get to this next clip here. So this is like more of an out route, but it's the same mechanics of the cut. Just because it's a single hard cut at the top of the break does not change how I would coach this. So you see when he's about to make this break, what's the first part of his foot that strikes the ground? See how it's the ball of the foot, right? The first part that hits the ball, middle arch of his foot. And his foot is just maybe slightly outside of his shoulder. That is the position that we always want to try to operate in. That's probably as far as I will let it happen too. But we want to strike on the ball of the foot first. That is what keeps our cuts inside of our frame. Fellas, anytime you feel like you're reaching, you're dragging the back foot, you're losing speed, check to see what part of your foot is hitting the ground. Is it your heel heel first, or is it your ball of your foot first? I'm not saying be on the tippy toe either, because if you guys are running routes and you cut on your tippy toe and you have kind of all that kind of speed going into the break and you cut on your tippy toes, you're probably going to fall forward, right? We have to focus on being on the ball of the foot. The whole foot can come down, but it should be toe, then heel, not heel, then his toe slapping down, because at least he can maintain a knee bend. He can maintain a strong position, and watch where his next step is. You see how his next step is already out of the route. He's pushing off of this because he has the correct foot strike. His hips are out of the break. He's out of this thing smoother than the last example. There's no getting stuck at this break. Now, one other thing that I want to talk about here is honestly, like I think so many wide receivers get caught up in this. They get caught up in the heel toe just because of a lack of their ability to stop while being on the ball of your foot. And that comes down to ankle stability, ankle strength, single leg strength, balance, knee stability. All those exercises that you do in the gym that maybe seem pointless are what translate to that. So a lot of wide receivers don't train correctly. Like a lot of guys just going to the gym, they lift like a bodybuilder. They're not doing specific things that are going to actually help them on the field with this movement, right? And that's why so many guys just physically can't do this type of stuff. Like they know to do it. They know to cut on the ball of their foot, but they feel extremely weak when they do it. They feel like they have no explosion because they are not strong. They are not stable in this leg. So what are some of those things that you could do? Because I'm not just going to tell you to do it and then, not give you ideas to do it. Anything that involves you being on one leg. So if you do like a single leg squat, that helps with this. That builds strength. You do like a single leg RDL. That helps with this. That builds strength. You do like a single leg box jump. That all builds that explosion. You land like maybe fall off of a box, land on one foot. That will strengthen the ankle. Do exercises where you have maybe like a weighted plate and on one foot you jump onto the plate, jump off, jump on, jump off. Anything to work on strengthening the ankle, giving you more stability and more balance will help you with this, fellas. And you have to practice landing on the correct part of your foot. Don't do those exercises and be on your heel because you're just repping out bad habits and getting strong in the wrong places. We want to be strong in a mechanically efficient spot, and that is how you can make a faster cut, at least when it's off of a speed cut situation. So let's play this again full speed. Just fellas, make sure we are operating on the ball of my foot. So now, that's not the only cut that you have to worry about as a wide receiver, because obviously there are speed cuts, there are signal cuts, but also there are cuts where you have to drop your hips into a break. So that would be like a curl, that would be a comeback, that would be a dig sometimes, a hitch route. How do you get out of those with as much speed as possible? And a lot of it ties into the speed cut in terms of like the single cut that we were just talking about. A lot of it ties into that, like foot strike, like making sure you get low, we don't reach outside my frame. Now, the other thing that ties into it is how quickly you can flip your hips around the break. So let's talk about that with this example. So this wide receiver is running a comeback route here. So at the top of the break, he snaps down and he's able to get out of this break in 3 steps. Now, does it need to be 3 steps every time? No. So many wide receivers get so caught up in, well, coach, could I get out of this break in 2 steps, 3 step, 1 step? At the end of the day, you have to get out of the break with little to no wasted time. I'm not talking steps because there are a lot of guys that will run up into the break and they're trying to get out of the break with what this wide receiver does. See how he takes 1 step here, second, third, out of it. He's out of that thing in 3 specific steps. Now, there are some of you out there listening to this who are advanced wide receivers, and that's something that you should be striving for. But there are a lot of beginner guys that still have not mastered the ability to drop their hips on a dime, self-fade, and they're worried about getting out of their breaks and steps. But fellas, if you run up to a break, let me tell you this, and you're trying to get out in 2 steps, 3 steps, and you slow yourself way down right before the break point, and then you just kind of give this slow turn and you just chop your feet, that is not enough to get you separation because you didn't sell it. Our goal should be able to self-fade, break on a dime, and get in and out with little to no wasted time, not steps, fellas. Eventually, you will get to that point. But if you're a beginner, intermediate, you should be focused on wasted time. So how do you get rid of wasted time? So this wide receiver, when he drops into the break, obviously pushing vertical, has to stop on a dime, right? And so that's that first step of the break. They call this like a trigger step. It triggers the hip drop. It triggers the level change where you get low. So he uses this trigger, snaps himself down so he gets low. This is how he slows himself down. Now, to get our hips out of the break, your second step is the most important step after you break. So like, let's say he's running a comeback. So the second step would be his outside foot. If you were running a curl and let's say you were snapping on the outside foot, which would be your right foot in this case on the right side, the left foot, the inside foot would be the pivot step. But you want to think snap and then pivot. Because if you can almost turn your toe at like a 45-degree angle, what is that going to do to your hips? That's going to start to turn your hips. And then your third step, right? So you snap, pivot. The third step will naturally hook back around. Middle arch of the foot will be down on a 45, and you could ultimately push and drive, or maybe if you take extra steps, at least your hips are out of this thing fast. At least your hips are down the angle quickly because we pivoted on the second step. Now, here's where a lot of wide receivers will go wrong. They get so caught up in the pivot step that they forget to sell vertical. They will run up, and even before they snap down with their trigger step, they will start to turn their body. They'll start to turn their hips, turn their shoulders. And as we know, if I start to turn before the break point, that's an indicator. That gives away the route. So what we have to do is we have to drop first. Let the hips slow us down. Then we pivot to get my hips around. Then I hook, and I can eliminate wasted time and wasted steps when we get to a certain point. So fellas, that is how you get out of that comeback curl break a little bit faster. It's not just about dropping your hips. We can talk about dropping our hips all day long, right? We post a lot of videos on that. But those little details of pivoting and hooking is what will get those hips around fast. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you would like 200 plus wide receiver and quarterback drills that you can do, all put into playlists with the exact sets and reps to follow, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to get you on that. I'll see you guys next time.